the post. So we're live, but we don't have to get started just yet. I'm just gonna record this because I always have problems when I'm doing live videos. It always cuts out, and then because the live stream is not very reliable, and it gets cut out midway. So
I see.
it's good to have a backup recording. So what have you been working on, by the way?
Just some things related to the site state.
Mm.
Probably tomorrow I'm gonna be producing the snapshot of like what's basically been tipped so far to the anonymous users, and then so like right now essentially like that's a custodial account, right? Because any of the tips to the anonymous users have gone to the EOS form anon account, which is obviously an account that we have control over. So after I've produced the snapshot, what I'll be doing is once the side state contract for the proof of authority network launches, I'll be sending over the Atmos from EOS form anon over to the side state contract with the according anonymous ID with that, so then people will be able to claim it from that side state contract, assuming they have the private key corresponding to that public key.
That's another thing I want to bring up maybe after the podcast. Is like some way to let people save their private key, not just on the browser, but maybe like email themselves their private key.
Save it to a file or something.
Yeah, just so, because like I know most people don't refresh the cache in the browser, but if they do and they do have tokens on it, they kind of screw, right? Like, so, or at least like
well, there's really only two ways to deal with it, right? So either you have to make someone manually go in there and generate the private key so that they know that there actually is something there in the first place, or okay, so even if I give like people the option to, let's say, save their private key to a file or email it to them or like whatever, right? If they don't know that that's there, like they don't know that like that setting is there, and they never actually go and explore and find that setting, and let's say they reset their cache, okay, well they just lost that private key, right? So the only way to prevent that is to explicitly tell them, is to make them set that up themselves instead of doing it automatically. But then that adds friction, because now they have to actually basically do a sign-up procedure instead of the way it works right now, where it automatically creates the anon ID for them if they don't.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we gotta have to show that out one way or the other. Can you take a look at this? For whatever reason, it's not showing the video. I'm gonna send it to you in Discord.
Sure.
Take a look at that post, and let me know what you see. You don't see the YouTube video, right? It says YouTube refused to connect.
A sec. I see a link to the YouTube video, but not the actual live stream itself.
Okay, that's strange. Yeah, I think the link works and we're live right now, but it just, for whatever reason, it's not showing up in the post.
Let me take a look at this. I've never actually tried to embed a live stream. I think we have only ever embedded the VODs of the live stream, which are basically regular videos at the end of the day.
But I did try with the Binding of the Binding Isaac live stream I did. That worked fine, and so I don't know why this wouldn't work. It's public on YouTube. I am live on YouTube. It looks good. So what's going on? Hmm.
Yeah, that's really strange. I see what you mean by it saying that it refused to connect. I see that on Chrome. On Firefox, it just doesn't actually even show the iframe. And I checked the link, and the link does seem to be correct.
Yeah, okay, well,
I think it'll work like once the actual like recording's up, but
yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not like while it's live streaming.
No, but like I understand that will work for the video, but it's just, when I did the live stream for the game playthrough of Binding of Isaac, it worked fine. And I kind of want to
Oh,
have,
that's strange.
yeah, yeah, and I kind of want to have like for future podcasts, we kind of have it live. And when people comment, they could comment on the thread, and we could tip them a bit at most. That was my thinking, like for the future. But I guess we could work on it another day, and we just do the podcast today. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a choice, really. Okay. Let me give that a super like. Bump it up to the top. Let's go 50. Boot. Okay. Just edit the iframe out. No attachment. Okay, I see this works. Oh, did you get a chance to take a? Did you get can't even speak right now. Do you see the Twitter embedded thing? That was pretty interesting. I couldn't get it to work myself, but
What do you mean?
Check your message. Let me send it to you
Yeah, but
again.
what about it in specific? Like, are you talking about?
Oh, can we like make that like can we include that into the form so when that people post a Twitter link, it show up like that
Yeah, that's all you have to do. Just post the link to the Twitter.
on the form?
Yeah, just post it as an attachment. URL and link, and it'll display it like that.
Really? Okay, let me try. Go. So I do new post and tweet link, and I go to wanna know tweets. Tweets.
Yeah, and then just hit display to link, and obviously your Twitter link should look something like this. Like that's the one used in that post that you had linked to me.
So when I get the Twitter link, it's just a link, right? It doesn't have to be any.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a link to the post.
Okay, and then I put URL link.
Yeah, URL and link.
Okay, and then preview tweets. Oh, okay, there you go. Huh. Did not know that. That is good to know. Well, I just learned something new today. Okay. Cool. Okay, well, are we getting distracted? So let's start the podcast. I'm gonna share the link in Discord and then on Twitter maybe also. YouTube. Okay, gonna go to Novusphere General Impromptu Podcast, impromptu. How do you spell impromptu?
Good question.
Impromptu.
Oh, spelled exactly like how you think it would be.
Okay. Gotcha. Google, spell check to the rescue. Tweet. Tweet. Okay. It is done. Let's start talking about things. Hello and welcome to another impromptu Novusphere podcast. We were trying to do it live. We're trying to embed the video on our form live, but it seems like YouTube doesn't like it for whatever reason. But I am Jack Wells, or Big Blue Whale as I am known on EOS and on the forums. And today we have Asphyxia. Do you want to say hello, Asphyxia?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
So today we're just gonna do a very kickback podcast. We've been collecting these links that we want to talk about that somewhat pertains to the platform and it's kind of in the general direction of what we're trying to do with our form. So yeah. So which one caught your attention the most? Asphyxia.
I think two that are a bit interesting to me more so than the others are probably the one pertaining to the censorship that was happening on Steemit, as well as the one on the F-Trader subreddit where they've created a token called Donuts that represents the karma or the points that are being distributed on that sub.
Yeah, so well, we were kind of already talking about that, so why don't we start with that then? With the donut stuff. I know you have some experience with it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give my understanding of it, and just for the listener, bear in mind there might be some things that are wrong that I say because I'm not very active on that sub and I haven't been following it too closely. But from what I gather, the creators of that sub have worked together with some of the Reddit administrators. So this isn't entirely a third-party thing that's been done. It's been done sort of in partnership with Reddit. And basically what it is they had a system separate from your regular point upload system, your regular karma, called donuts. And these donuts would be sort of taken as like a snapshot occasionally. So I don't know how frequently it happens, but maybe it happens like every day or so. And so pretty much for just participating in the sub, if you're getting upvotes and stuff, then you're earning donuts. And so donuts, just like karma, is actually just kept in a centralized ledger, which is the Reddit database. And even though it's kept in a centralized ledger, you can still transfer it from one user to another user, again, through the Reddit system. And then where the third-party integration comes into this is another user, or again, perhaps it was the moderators of the sub. But this part can be done as third-party, is they tokenize that as an ERC20 token, and so I assume the way that works is you send your donuts to, a custodial account, and then you are able to withdraw these ERC20 donut tokens and then trade them freely as you see fit on the Ethereum blockchain. And at any point, you can redeem those ERC20 tokens for, the actual donuts on Reddit. So it works very similar to how like a custodial stablecoin would work. Now, as for what the donuts are used for, I don't know if it actually affects uploading weight at all on the form, but on FTrader, there are a few unique aspects of what the donuts have been used for, which is they do have like a leaderboard which shows, the people on the sub who have the most donuts. The banner at the top of the sub that you see at the top, I believe if you pay like a certain amount of donuts, you can change that banner to like whatever you want, assuming it meets certain criteria.
Right.
And as well, you can create polls on FTrader, and those polls, when you vote on things, they are weighted by the amount of donuts that particular user voting has. So there are a few ways that donuts are used on that sub.
Yeah, so I'm on the Reddit sub right now. So you could buy a banner for 200,000 donuts, which is it's quite a bit, because looks like the auto moderator, I guess the bot only has 379k donuts. So only the default, moderator, the bot moderator only could buy one banner, so it's pretty expensive actually. So
I'm looking for that article you linked me earlier about donuts, because I remember that when I was reading that article, it did actually mention a trade that was recently done. So let me see.
It also it says here, if you click on it, buy banner, you get to set the price of the banner. The owner sets the price for the banner. They pay a daily tax rate of 1% by burning donuts.
So you said that it's 200,000?
Yeah, 200,000, and it's owned by .comedy.
The article you linked mentioned someone buying 400 donuts for 0.0 ETH. So if you were to take 200,000 divided by 400 and then multiply by 0.01 ETH, you'd get 5 ETH. So at the current price of like ETH, that's like around like $600 USD.
Okay. Huh. I mean,
so I don't know like how long you're allowed to like have your banner up for, or how it works, like if somebody else wants to buy a slot, but yeah.
Well, let's say that they pay a daily tax rate of 1%. So I think it's whatever, they get to set the price, but they also have to pay 1% of that price every day. So I think that's how they, they're preventing people from just hogging it, If the owner cannot pay the tax, the price goes to zero. Anyone can buy the banner at its advertised price. The owner cannot refuse to sell at that price. Okay, interesting. Wouldn't it be cool if we just went in and just bought a banner for discussions.app? How troll would that be?
Pretty funny. Maybe that's something that we can do at some point.
Is that a good use of the funds, of the marketing funds? I don't know.
Maybe not at this point, but maybe later. It's not too bad of an idea.
But that would be interesting though, because that would be such a rub in their face. But that's for another day.
Well, again, the question is under what criteria would they actually censor whoever it is that purchases the banner?
Right.
If they don't like the person, I'm assuming they'll still like let it through. But imagine somebody buys the banner and they set some like really obscene content.
Right.
Something like that would get censored or blocked.
But if it's just us, technically, that's something I've seen about our website. It's just it's just on EOS. That's about it.
I think it would look really bad if they were to censor something like that, like just like a competitor, advertising.
Yeah. Great. So their hands are tied. So Okay, it's done, right? Like, we're gonna buy this banner with the donuts.
Like I said, maybe in the future, we'll see.
We gotta talk to Brian about it and get his
Yeah,
approval.
financial decisions are no longer in my ball court.
Gotcha. Okay, so well, that's interesting in itself, but should we look towards that model? I know we kind of working on our own advertising system. Like, do you think like this is quite similar, but not exactly the same, right? The idea of that once you buy it, you own it, and you can sell it is kind of what we're doing, but we don't have a tax rate. We just kind of yeah. Do you want to explain how our structure will work as envisioned right now?
Yeah, sure. So the way we currently have it planned in our tokenomics document is there's a initial base cost for your advertising slot. So for all
Mm-hmm.
intents and purposes, let's just imagine that advertising slot is a banner just like the one you're seeing on FTrader,
Mm-hmm.
for our listener. And so, maybe the base cost for that is, let's say, $10.
Mm-hmm.
And so once one person buys it, you own that slot essentially for um 72 hours. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's say, so that's 3 days. And so let's
Mm-hmm.
say you only own it for one day, and then somebody else has the opportunity to actually pay the same amount that you paid plus a little bit more. So let's call it, 20% at this time. I'm throwing out like arbitrary numbers because
Mm-hmm.
the numbers haven't been set in stone for the people listening. So let's say they pay $12. Okay, so then what's happening there is you will be reimbursed for the remaining amount that you uh that hasn't been used. So since you paid $10 for 3 days, if it's only been up for a day, you're gonna get back $6.66.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this person, by buying it for a higher price, has raised the floor on how much somebody else who wants to outbid them would have to pay. And so this can be a continuous procedure in
Mm-hmm.
terms of price discovery, in terms of what the advertising slot is actually worth. And then it of course may reach a point where nobody wants to actually pay for it, and at that point the
Mm-hmm.
system can start to reset itself. And so there are a couple different ways you can go about resetting the system, which
Mm-hmm.
is you could reset all the way back to the base price, which may not be a very good idea, because for example, like if price discovery finds that people are willing to pay $1,000 for a 72-hour time slot, you might not want to reset all the way down to $10. So what might
Mm-hmm.
make more sense is that if the price slot goes unpaid for after the 72 hours, you cut the current price in half. So instead of, let's say, charging 1,000, now it's 500, and then basically you restart the price discovery procedure from there. And
Mm-hmm.
so that prevents it from being as long of a procedure as it was initially.
Right, right. Yeah, I get what you mean. Like it might make sense from a just thinking it naively that okay, we will start at zero again. But if you think of it in terms from the advertiser, like I don't want to have to wait until the like people kind of gouge prices until right. Like if I let's say I buy I it goes back to zero, right? I'm willing to pay $1,000 for it because that's what the price discovery reached. So I don't want to wait until that price goes to 1,000 again before I buy it. I just want to kind of jump in and start advertising right away. Is that the thinking
Yeah,
behind?
exactly.
Okay.
Resetting entirely, there would be a lot of back and forth again, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit cumbersome for those who want to use the advertising service. So
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
agree with you entirely.
So how do you see that system as compared to the one that they have in place with for Eve Trader? Because they also, I think, actually think this is kind of interesting as well because, the you kind of have that like real estate model where if you buy it, well, I guess for our model, like you don't really own it, and you can't set the price. It's kind of like just like a set premium when you sell it. Yeah, like what? How do you see the two comparing?
Um, it's hard to say really because I think what ends up happening a lot is so you can look at something like the Bitcoin.com domain, right? So if you imagine it maybe like in the very early days of Bitcoin, really wasn't worth anything. And if you look at it now, everyone wants to fight tooth and nail over who owns the
Right, right,
Bitcoin.com domain.
right.
And it's a very scarce resource because there's really only one Bitcoin.com domain. So, in this case as well, this is, in terms of the F-Trader banner, it's a very scarce resource. There's really only one banner, so only one person can own it. It's not like a house, for example, where, like, if you don't own a house, you don't own a house, period. It's like, well, there are several houses in the world, more than one houses in a country. So I think this model of like having actual ownership over it is maybe not the greatest model in particular for an advertising banner, due to the large speculative costs that may be driven due to it. And then the other issue is that it's a very naive sense of owning something, um, because you would assume that by buying this thing that you supposedly own in a crypto subreddit, that you actually own it. But it's very similar actually to how houses work, where when you buy a house, you still have to pay property tax to the government. What happens when you don't pay property taxes? Well, you know, people with weapons show up to your house and you're forcefully evicted.
Right,
So
right.
very similarly here, it's like you don't actually own it either, because if you don't pay the tax, then you lose it. And likewise, if you were to put up obscene content, then you're likely going to be censored. So again, I don't know if the real the model of actual ownership is maybe the best, but we'll have some time to see how it plays out, and maybe there will be some workshopping there in terms
Okay.
of what's done.
I do agree with you that, especially for, personally for me, that I think having different advertisements is a little bit kind of keeps the page fresh. Because I imagine if you have this banner and you're paying 1% per day, you're willing to pay that cost, right? And it's gonna be up there for months and months. And when you're seeing the same thing months and months, it's not that exciting. So I do think that having, kind of, you have 72 hours, and if someone buys you out before then, you get a little bit back, but you still, like, it encourages kind of a faster churn in terms of advertisements. So, which I think it's not a bad thing.
The other thing to consider is that in the F-Trader model, it's not a for-profit model by any means, or at least assumingly so. It's not done with the intent of for profit. It's done with the intent of how can we limit the amount of spam that's happening in terms of the advertising, and stupid pointless advertising. So maybe not spat.
True, 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 true.
So in our case though, um the last person who pays for the advertisement, since nobody buys them out, the final revenue for that does go into the form DAO account, and so that gets distributed back to the token holders, or the stakers in this case. So there is somewhat of a for-profit model essentially in there. Whether you want to characterize it though as profit or not, I guess is up for debate. But you understand what I mean. Or there's something that's being attempted to be given back to token holders in that particular case, whereas in the F-Trader case there isn't.
No, I understand what you're saying. Okay, cool. So I think we kind of covered it in detail. Kind of exhausted as well. Is there anything you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
No, that's about it. It seems like a really cool experiment, and I'm curious
Yeah.
to see where it goes and how it continues to play out.
The funny thing is, I think this person bought it, but there is nothing on it. It's just like purple. So I don't know what the deal of that is.
The other thing as well is I don't actually think you see the banner if you're still on old Reddit, or if you haven't opted into new Reddit.
I opted on to new Reddit. So I think I could go I think I could go old.reddit.com and then see. I can see
Yeah,
the.
I still use old Reddit. I haven't opted into the new one, so I actually don't even see the banner that they've put up.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
kind of wonder how many people are still using old Reddit as well, right? So
Right. Fair enough. You can't see the donut thing on the old banner. That is correct. The over there, like I get it. People attached to it, but it doesn't look that great. There's a lot of functionality. There's a lot of moving things, but yeah, I like the new
I've
Reddit.
never been someone who's really asked for too much out of a UI. So as far as
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned, it looks fine to me.
And
But
that's
I
why.
guess that's why I'm not in charge of UI, right? So
Exactly. I was just gonna say. Okay, moving on. Moving on. So, on the next one, CN from ccn.com. Bitcoin ransom 9/11 papers hacker group banned from Steam platform. So this is something very dear. What's the phrase? Close and dear to our heart. Oop. Uh, so what do you make of this? Reddit banning users, which is technically not the correct terminology, I don't think.
so I think this was, an arguably questionable decision from, the Steam team early on,
Mhm.
is you have
Mhm.
their blockchain, which is called Steam, and
Mhm.
then you have their platform for browsing that blockchain called Steemit.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
people are naturally just going to, shorten names down. It's, a characteristic of, languages. It happens all the time, contracting words.
Yep.
And so people are, generally are not going to refer to Steemit's website as, Steemit. They're going to just refer to it as Steam.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when somebody says that something was censored from Steam, your gut reaction is to think it was also censored from the blockchain. And this is
Mhm.
very bad, essentially, in terms of we see a lot of FUD that happens all the time in crypto, and misinformation gets spread around. And once that misinformation starts to get spread around, it's very hard to stop that misinformation from
Yep.
being spread around.
Mhm.
So, especially with a lot of people who have preconceived notions about like a blockchain. So, um, in this case, just for clarification, they weren't censored from Steemit's blockchain, which the
Mhm.
article, does specifically say platform. But again, I'm
Yeah.
going to assume most readers of that are going to skim past that word as they read, and they're going to just assume they're censored from the blockchain altogether.
Right.
So what they're being censored from is the actual Steemit website, which
Mhm.
is the tool you use to browse what's on the blockchain. And there are multiple uh, interfaces for browsing the Steam blockchain, such as busy.org
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
steemit.com.
Mhm.
So I think what they did in terms of censoring them does actually make a lot of sense,
Mhm.
in the sense that Steemit as a company who runs the website has full control of what's displayed on that website, does not want the legal responsibility of that content, being on their site. And that,
Right.
I think that makes, sense and is understandable, especially if they're operating within a U.S. jurisdiction.
Right.
And I
Right.
think it's very similar to, again, if there was like obscene content that was being shown, well, you would expect that they would censor that as well to be compliant with whatever laws that they were doing.
Right.
Busy.org, on the other hand, has, I believe, at this content that they want to display and how they display it and how they prioritize what content to display to the user. And of course, that's actually the exact same in terms of, what we're working on in terms of the form.
Mhm.
Now, I
Mhm.
think where the big difference lies is what is the complexity and the availability of being able to spin up your own Steam interface. So
Mhm.
let's suppose Steemit was the only interface for browsing the Steam blockchain, which, for a large amount of time, it was the only interface.
Right.
How easy would it be for me to set something up locally, or to set something up, that other people can use that doesn't employ the same censorship that the main company is being forced to employ? And
Mhm.
from my understanding of it at this point in time, it's not that easy to set up. And I think if it was easier, we'd see a lot more different Steam interfaces, aside from, the small amount that you can probably count on your hand.
Mhm.
Um, and And so because of that, I think censorship is a big problem in that regards for Steemit because, if you only have, let's say, 4 or 5 interfaces, and those are the interfaces that everyone uses, if they all agree to censor a particular user or particular content, then really nobody's going to see that content ever. Because who cares if it's on a blockchain if nobody knows about it?
Right, right.
And just tying this again back to like what we're doing here,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest difference is we try to make it as easy as possible for people to get things set up locally, and if they don't want to use the main website, discussions.app,
Mm-hmm.
or the older version, the unmoderated version, eos-form.org, then they can always just set things up locally and do their own thing. And I think that is something that Steemit really lacks, as well as a lot of other dApps need to start pushing for, is for users to have the option of being able to self-host everything if there ever are compromised at the, let's say, domain level of the app itself.
Mm-hmm. So this is where, I'm not too clear and I want to ask you to clarify is, do we have a solution to like domain wide sensor level sensor? Because I know we could set the different moderation endpoints. So on eos.discussions.app, should we choose to change where we point to for moderation? We could, let's say this is a piece of content that has been censored on eos.discussions.app. We can still point to different moderator and we will see that content on that domain. Is that correct? Or is that something I'm not getting right?
So in terms of how it works for our interface, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So for example, we might censor something through our
Mm-hmm.
moderator settings, and then if
Right.
the user were to opt out of our settings,
Mm-hmm.
by default on discussions.app, you're opted into it. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you were to opt out, you would now be able to see that censored content. Now, I think that might be something that requires legal clarification in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the user opts out, is that still our responsibility because that content is being displayed through our domain? And
Mm-hmm.
at this point in time, I'm led to believe that we're not entirely responsible for that. For example, if somebody serves obscene content through
Mm-hmm.
IPFS and you access that content through IPFS.io, does the IPFS Foundation automatically become responsible for that, or do they have to censor it and make sure that nobody can access it from their thing? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little ambiguous at
Mm-hmm.
this particular point in time. But yeah, you're absolutely right about how that would work. If they were to opt out of it on discussions.app, they would be able to see any censored content.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna navigate over to discussions.app on my screen just to show what the listeners or viewers are we're talking about. So if you go to eos.discussions.app and you hit the little gear icon right here, and you go to moderation, which I'm at right now, you can see that Novusphere form mod is the moderation setting. So you can actually remove that, and by removing that, you're able to see all the content that's been posted on the blockchain using the form contract, uncensored, unfiltered. You can see everything that's out there, including the things that we might have hit from you when we do the moderation tools. So just so you know. Yeah, and like Asphyxia said, this is kind of a legal gray area because again, all that content is already on the blockchain. Like we are just kind of a filter, but if you choose to unfilter it yourself but still see it on our domain, do we have legal liability for that? So that's something we don't know just yet. So this might or might not change. I think we're gonna be fine. Like honestly.
Yeah, the way I look at it is it's the user explicitly making that option to opt out of it, so then it becomes their responsibility. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have that expertise to comment on that.
Right,
But either
right.
way, I mean, our moderation policies have been very lax. There's been very few posts that we've actually gone and
Mm-hmm.
blocked from the platform, and
It's mostly
I assume that for
spam.
a while we're gonna keep it that way.
Mm-hmm. Speaking on that, a kind of tangent as well, but we are getting our first spammers, which is is funny, but it's kind of exciting. Let's see if I can find
I
it.
saw that post you're referring to as well.
Yeah, so this guy was been posting. I want to see if I can find it. Posting something about a what's the name of the car brand?
I remember the post, I just don't remember what it said, honestly.
Yeah, this guy advertising like a dealership out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, I think, which is like the strangest spam post I have seen. Like, I just don't understand why he chose to post on this platform specifically. But yeah, we're getting our first spam post, so we might actually have to use some of those moderation tools that we've been not using just yet. But anyways, but that's neither here or there. Let's go back to the list of topics we have. Do you have anything else you want to cover? If not, I'll pick up some of my things.
Not particularly. I mean, yeah, feel free to go.
Mm-hmm. So I think it was really interesting to see this article about Roger Ver fake social media account. You know, like we have seen, you know, if you spend any amount of time on Twitter, on the crypto Twitter specifically, the cryptocurrency sphere of Twitter, you see that there's a lot of fake accounts. You know, a lot of people claiming to be a lot of other people, impersonating them and using them to scam people. This is why you see like on Vitalik's handle, I think he's like the non-giver of ETH. So this is something that is very rampant. Elon Musk was his account was impersonated by a bunch of other people. So this is really interesting because like what we're doing here on the decentralized form, I don't think it was kind of like a top priority for us. But one of the things about having this on chain is that you could almost verify the account because only that account can have that name. And this applies specifically to different projects. So you can imagine like EOS Cafe, right? If let's say someone came up, oh, we actually did see this happen with the eCaf thing. Someone pretended with a name very similar to eCaf, and they start sending out messages telling people to send them EOS tokens or else their account will be freezed. So like these things do happen. But if you know the official eCaf account and you kind of check if it actually matches up, you can see that they're a scammer and you don't have to listen to them. So I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Could that same argument be applied though to like the Twitter, where it's if you just looked at their actual Twitter handle, because all Twitter handles are unique, then you would know if it's a scammer or not?
Yeah, that is true. But in this case, if you click on their account, you can see if their account is linked to any kind of the token contracts, right?
Right.
Whereas on Twitter, you know, you could see someone, when you click on someone's profile, he could make everything look exactly like it. From the picture, from the banner, from like the tweets, he could make it look exactly the same.
Well, the main thing you'd be looking for is the Twitter handle in specific.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm just saying, I think having that extra element of verification is nice to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there.
So yeah, I just think that's interesting. And there's also I remember there was a Dan Lammer put out an article way back in earlier Steam days. It's like where you kind of have like these social verification systems where you can see the accounts are linked to which other accounts, and there you can verify them that way. So if you see like the Novusphere Foundation account is linked to Raining Atmos, right? Therefore, Raining Atmos is kind of like a semi-official account of Novusphere, and therefore you could trust it. Versus if this account that just popped out of nowhere, let's say Dropping Atmos was the account name. You don't see that connection to the official Novusphere account, and therefore this is likely an account that is set up to scam people. So that's like another thing another element we could use because all that information is on chain. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, let's see. Oh, so moving on to more platform-specific news, we got featured on one of EOS Gravity's weekly updates, which is kind of cool, just to show that people are, actually picking up our project. Like, it's people are noticing the work we're doing.
Yeah, it's super cool that we're starting to get noticed by the community. Have some more people posting on the forum, posting content updates, that sort of thing. It's really
Yeah,
great to.
yeah, really, really cool. And also, there was a article by Concept Skip covering all the controversial slash popular referendums, and he name dropped Luke Stuck, which he was mentioning. I think the specific referendum he was talking about is the Rex for All referendum, which is a very interesting referendum. But for us, the interesting part is that Luke Stokes actually dropped by and dropped a comment clarifying his position on that topic, which is really cool as well. Let me see if I can find it. So let's see. So if you're watching this on my screen, you can see here Luke's EOS proxies account. He's commenting on this long article by Concept Skip. Specifically covering Rex for All, which I think he brought a really good point, which was it was decaf. Sorry, it was decaf, where because decaf is named in the Constitution, to get rid of ECAF would mean a change to the Constitution, which is, I don't think that's something most people recognize or like kind of realize. So Luke just say, I imagine most referendum will be malformed to provide a way for token holder to express themselves. That's useful too, and may lead to future action items that do involve actual referendum with specific code changes, constitution changes, and or recording contract changes. So
Does
really,
it actually need a change to the Constitution, though, or could it just be treated as an amendment?
I don't think it would be able to pass as a amendment. Oh, actually, that is true. But like, I think,
I mean, an amendment can be a repeal.
right. Is the threshold for passing amendments same as changing the Constitution?
I have no idea. I believe it is.
Uh-huh. Huh. Right, that's another interesting point. I think the threshold is higher if again, I have no idea either. But definitely anything regarding the Constitution would require much higher threshold than a referendum, which is what this is proposed as a referendum to get rid of decaf. Whereas if we are actually following, the legal standard, it would have to be a constitutional change, which again sets the bar much higher. So I decided to tip him some EOS deck, which just because I kind of like the logo. It's kind of cool. And there is Concept Skip replying, "Hi Luke, thanks for stopping by and taking time to comment. Whereas I agree with you, a good method to measure token holders' sentiment, yet decaf is actually a referendum, so if passed would need to be implemented, but evidently the proposal doesn't include any measures to so be taken. So who's to decide what is to happen once it gets passed might turn into quite conundrum and annoy voters, which might expect a different outcome. Ask what they eventually get. Curious about your thoughts on this." Cool. So very interesting discussion that's happening on the referendums.
Yeah, I think that sort of ties into another discussion. And so, I saw someone else raise this point elsewhere about whether how much does the 15% threshold for standard referendums actually matter. And so basically what their point was, at this point in time, we don't really have a huge amount of people voting for BPUs.
Right.
And, if Block 1 were to vote with 10% of the EOS blockchain belonging, or the EOS tokens belonging to them, they could essentially elect, every 21 block producers all on their own. And so, let's say there was a group of, 3 people, and in total they represented, 10% as well. And maybe at this point in time, these 3 people aren't voting the exact same way. But there is some referendum that they want to pass, and they're struggling, and nobody else is voting on it, and it's stuck at, let's say, their 10% plus like 1% from like other community voters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there's a bunch of standby BPs that say, we'll implement this referendum, they don't actually need to get the 15%. They can just, take their 10% and elect in those standby BPs, and then by electing in those standby BPs, then they can actually go ahead and implement that referendum proposal. So,
Mm.
this calls into question whether how much does the 15% actually matter at this point in time in terms of implementing referendums, and likewise, if there is a higher threshold for or for changes to the Constitution or for amendments or whatever,
Mm.
well, again, you can easily override all of this by simply, voting in the BPs that are willing to uphold whatever referendum it is that you want to pass, even if you don't have 15% essentially on your
Mm.
side. So I think there's some interesting discussions to be had about how this should be handled, what should be done about it. Does the 15% actually make sense? But I think at this point in time, it's good enough with what we have,
Mm-hmm.
and we shouldn't waste too much time. Let's say scrapping what we already have and then trying to do something completely different.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say there is that there is a way to kind of subvert the rule, which is, you need to have 15% and the 50% of all token votes, and that there has to be a difference of 10% or greater in order to pass. Like, that's the official rules now. But if, let's say, a group of very committed token holders or someone who just have a lot of tokens like block.one comes in and say, hey, we have 10%, we don't have the threshold to vote in the referendum ourselves, but what we could do is vote in the block producers that is favorable to passing the referendum.
Yes, the implementing referendums is basically a socially enforced thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
done automatically by code, and it
Right,
can't
right.
be done automatically by code either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the PPs to basically enforce that social construct of, it needs to be over 15% and it needs to meet whatever criteria. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if you have a set of BPs that are willing to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of circumvent that social contract, and
Mm-hmm.
you can vote those BPs in,
Mm-hmm.
then you can sort of get around, that, social contract and limitation that's being imposed there. So,
That is very
I mean,
interesting.
obviously, the worthwhile having debate there is, what are the economic implications of that? How will EOS token holders respond to that? How will the market respond to that? And, so on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think they, I mean, I don't think, I think they're, I'm kind of split on this because in one, just voting in a BP that's sympathetic to you and passing referendums seems like it's kind of subverting the process. But at the same time, like you could just vote for those BPs. Like, there's no rule saying that you can't vote for those BPs, right? So, if you look at it from that lens, the 15% is kind of just arbitrary, which I guess it makes sense that that person said that it doesn't really matter. So, that is a interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
like I said, it's definitely something that's considering. Not really sure how it'll play out. I don't really see anyone, trying to force something as hostile as this, because I feel like hostile actions will be perceived overall as the community very negatively and
Mm-hmm.
have very negative impacts on the price. I feel like if you want to do something like that and you don't really have the majority of people supporting it, you're more than happy, or you're more than capable of just forking the EOS IO software, and you can just do an airdrop and give everyone the same amounts of tokens that they have on the EOS chain, and do your own thing.
I guess that's kind of what like the other sister chains are doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you been? I know this is not covered in the list of articles, but have you been following the BOS thing, the side chain, the sister chain?
Yeah, so it looks like they're doing some really interesting things there. It doesn't seem like it's as completely pointless as originally I thought it was.
Okay.
I mean, like, we see, like, a lot of sidechains, and,
Right,
you have
right.
to be skeptical about, like, well, how useful is this? Is it actually going to ever be really used for anything, or is this just a cool, side project?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's being used for some cool things, which is inter-blockchain communication, and it looks like
Right.
they've already made some good progress in terms of being able to move tokens from one blockchain to another in a trustless way.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't fully done my due diligence on that, but it looks like they are making some good grounds on that. Initially, I assumed that process might have been custodial, but I was taking a
Mm-hmm.
look at some of the contracts today, and it looks like some of it might actually be enforced by actual code without human intervention.
So I'm always a critic against jargon. So inter-blockchain communication really just means that you have two contracts, and they're kind of like mirror contracts, one on the mainnet and one on the sister chain. If you send your token to that contract on the mainnet, it gets locked up, and that contract, like that kind of communicates to other chains like, hey, we locked up X amount of EOS, now release X amount of EOS onto your sister chain. That's pretty much it, right? Like,
Sorry, can you repeat that?
right. So I was just saying that inter-blockchain communication is essentially two different contracts, like mirror contracts, on two different chains, if you will. You send your tokens to one of them in the main chain, like the EOS main chain, and that contract communicates with the contract on the sister chain, and it's like, hey, excuse me, I locked up X amount of tokens, EOS tokens, release X amount of EOS tokens on the sister chain. Like, that's essentially what it is, right?
Yeah, so it's allowing you to move one token from another.
Mm-hmm.
One token from one blockchain to another. I see it very similar as to what Bancor does with allowing you to move your BNT from
Mm-hmm.
EOS to ETH and back and forth, but the process for doing that is very centralized and custodial. It's not done through smart contracts. So in this case, what BOS seems to be doing is it is more oriented towards doing it through smart contracts, and I would assume essentially what they're doing is something similar to an atomic swap. But again, I haven't fully looked into it because this is just something that I noticed, within like the last 24, 48 hours, and I took a glance at it. So, I'm curious to see where they go with it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Okay, so I think that's been like more than half an hour now. So maybe you should wrap it up if you have anything else you want to bring up.
No, I don't really have anything I'd like to add. Thanks for having me on and great discussions as always.
Yeah, definitely. Always interesting to have you on. Okay, cool. So we're gonna call it night. Thanks for listening. We will try to do this more regularly, and we will try to do it with a post on eos.discussions.app. So if you're listening, you could post a comment, and we could kind of tip you a little bit at most for your comments and questions. But for now, YouTube is not playing nice with our page. So next time.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, catch you guys later.